just a quick explanation of what is going to happen. So we have divided this talk. This is meant to be a very intimate conversation. What we normally do is we put together all the major players in construction and architecture, and here we have really the excellence in Miami. So we have architects, we have market experts, we have developers, and we want them to have a very honest and open conversation about what's happening, especially in Miami in this case. So we're going to start with a presentation on the scenario, and David is going to tell us what Miami is all about right now and what is the forecast for the future and his way of reading the city, he was telling me before. Then we'll have a section where we're going to have an interaction with all the panelists about their approach and their vision of Miami, whether it is from the developer standpoint, from the architect, from the interior design. And then we'll have a section called Going Global, where we have an Italian architect who has worked in Miami, has had some very successful projects here, and can give us a little bit of the perspective of the Italian architect coming to work in our own backyard. And then we'll open it up to questions. And again, we encourage everyone, if you have anything to say or to contribute to, please do so. So I'm gonna introduce the panelists very quickly. So normally when we do this in Italy, we just have a moderator, but we're very lucky to have a very special moderator. Sorry, I'm gonna cover. Very special moderator. We have Jacqueline Touzet, who is a very successful architect herself. She is one of the founders of Touzet Studio. She's had a lot of awards and recognition. She is a frequent guest speaker and panelist, and Touzet Studio is known for thoughtful design and are mindful of site-specific culture and history, while also being a leader in innovative and sustainable design solutions. Their clients include global design and technology leaders such as Nike and Apple, and a select roster of private clients who value design and innovation. So thank you, Jackie, for having me come. Starting with this. Then we have David Siddons. He's a self-professed frustrated economist and real estate marketing tech junkie. He's a consistent top-producing agent whose incredible command of the market, commitment to his clients, and analytical yet creative mind has firmly placed him in the echelons of luxury real estate professionals and earned recognition as one of Miami's top agents and the top 100 nationwide. And David's long list of successful initiatives and industry-leading analysis and reports has positioned him as one of Miami's most influential real estate report and forecast producers, and has been interviewed and quoted by Bloomberg, CNBC, BBC World, and the Miami Herald and Curve Miami, to just name a few. Thank you. Sorry, it's taking a little long. We also have Brad Meltzer. He's a partner and president of Two Roads Development. And in his role, he oversees real estate development activities from design through construction and supports the team in identifying new real estate opportunities, as well as facilitating overall company growth. A sampling of such ventures include Biscayne Beach, the 1000 Museum Tower, the Four Towers Paraiso Complex, Ritz-Carlton Residences Miami Beach, the Marquise, 1100, W Hotel, and many, many more. He'll tell us about all the rest that he's been doing. Then we have, thank you. And then we have two ID interiors. We have the two founders. We have Rafaela Simoes and Laila Colvin. So Rafaela is originally from Brazil. She's the architect, and Laila is more of the, how should I say, the interior design expert and project manager. And I don't want to... So 2ID Interior specializes in the complete process of design and concept development for residential spaces, retail spaces, and advanced project. The 2ID team favors bold, fresh ideas and sophisticated techniques with the balance of color and use color use by applying its creative and unique process to every space. So thank you for being with us. And finally, we have Iosa Ghini Associates. Unfortunately, Massimo Iosa Ghini could not be with us, but we have his better half. He's not here, so I can say that. We have Milena Mussi, who is his partner. So Milena was born and lives in Bologna and works in Bologna and Milan. After her activity as marketing manager for international markets in the fashion business, in the 90s, she became partner of Iosa Ghini Associates, Architecture and Design, as managing director. So president of Raymond Loewy Foundation in Italy. She's a member of FERPI, which is the Italian Federation of Public Relations. She's member of the board of the charity foundation Hospice Servagnoli, and she cooperates with Japanese magazines as Italian correspondent of news on architecture, design, and art. And as I said, Iosa Ghini is the architect that has done the Flatiron here in Miami, the collection 20 years ago, and now is going under renovation again. So she will tell us a little bit about that. Thank you for staying with me. One a little long, but now we're gonna start. I'm just gonna pass the mic to Jackie, actually to David, who's gonna start the presentation with the part of the scenario. I'm gonna start with the...
Perfect. So in advance of that, we set up. Yes, my name is David Siddons. I'm president of the David Siddons Group. I am a self-professed economics junkie. More importantly, I spend my time with a team of 11. We sell real estate across Miami into Broward, and we reflect on the market's behavior. And it's really just born from our day-to-day experience of dealing with clients. We try to lean more into that than just the numbers. And we like to get a sense of where the market's going according to what our clients tell us in every day, hundreds and hundreds of feedback loops coming to us. And we are ranked in the top 20 teams in the country. Mid-sized teams. So very proud of my group, and hopefully what I can give you is some good insights. Really 10 points. I'm going to raise 10 points in 10 minutes, make it quick, about the Miami market and where we're going. So the first thing to say, if you've been watching the news recently, I'm sure you'll notice that there's a lot of news coming out about other cities in the US, Austin, namely one, Phoenix, San Francisco, a number of cities that are really struggling right now, and they're seeing corrections after huge influxes of people migrating during the pandemic. Miami is not one of them. Miami has done extremely well, but it's a very difficult city to understand because there are 16 different neighborhoods, there are 5 different price points within those neighborhoods, and then there's condos and homes. There's 150 variable answers, so it's just not simple. So if you go out and you read about what's going on in Miami, please bear in mind that that is probably a microcosm view. Miami overall obviously is great, but there's an enormous amount of spread. So I'm going to start off with the single-family homes. We'll talk about homes and condos, but the single-family home market is expected to rise about 5% in Miami for this year. And I think, honestly, if you look at some of the primary markets, which are the recipients of migrating families, which are coming from big groups, big corporate relocations like the Citadels of this world, Coconut Grove, Coral Gables, Pinecrest, South Miami, High Pines, and other areas that are around the best private schools, we're seeing big increases. I think we can see increases more around 7 to 10%. And that hopefully can give you a good setup for the rest of the year as we move forward, and I think that's really sustainable. The condo market is pretty stable overall. I will say there are other sub-markets within the market that you have to be a little bit careful of, and it's particular types of product that we're looking at in, say, the 1 to 3 range in Brickell that's resale older product. That's starting to accumulate sizable amounts of inventory. We've seen a double of inventory in the last year in that sector. We've seen increases of inventory in the ultra-luxury sector in areas like south of 5th, again, resale product, and Sunny Isles, the same thing, the 3 to 5 market, we've seen increases of inventory. Now, the inventory is increased up to, this is what we call 9 or 10 months for us. And the inventory is coming to around 14, and sometimes in worst case scenarios 20. Not as high as it was in the last cycles, but the speed of which we've got there can be a little concerning. So I say it's important to consider this and be aware as we move forward. The investor class product, if you look in Miami, you have primary and investor types of consumers out there. And the investor class right now is seeing some corrections in the rental market of around 7%. And that could give an influence for those investors to start to look at their returns, especially in light of the values of the units that have now gone up by as much as 50 and in some cases 100%. We have seen massive rises of condo product value increase over the last couple of years. Is absolutely staggering. And the returns of those investments now, when someone bought a unit and they were getting, let's say, $10,000 a month, and now the unit value's gone up by 100%, the ROI is not as good. So it's starting to pull back a bit. The upside of this is that long-term, Miami's looking very good. I deal a lot with groups like Citadel. I feel like every day I'm showing a house or a condo to someone from Citadel, and it comes from good experience knowing actually who are handling the migrations. There's 350 families, this is from an authority outside of this room that I heard, and I think it's pretty accurate, of families moving in, and only half of those have come so far. Plus there's Millennium, Tigress Capital, there's about a good dozen big hedge fund groups, and then all the financial groups that orbit them. So there's a huge amount of business gravity that's just drawing people in from California and New York, and it'll continue to do so. I mentioned critical mass. I'm going to go back to critical mass just a second, which was on point 4. Critical mass is an important aspect because in the last couple of years we saw massive amounts of people move here, and what I've observed when I take people around and show them homes and condos is they'll say to me, you know, my friends moved here and now I want to move. Or we'll sell to a family and they'll say, oh, my brother's calling you, my sister's calling you, my boss is moving down, the other team members are moving down. We have now got to that point of, it feels like the party they've got going. The music is blaring, everyone's having a great time, and everyone's leaving the uncool parties and they're coming hard and heavy into Miami. Still New York, still California, still DC, still Chicago. These are still driving engines. This city is not going down, it's just going to keep going up with a legitimate engine that we didn't quite have before. And this can really be attested to compound this effect with the fact that people simply aren't leaving. Me and my team have moved 148 families in the last 18 months into Miami, 2 years. And even today I was on the way here, I had 2 more calls on the way in the car here from other families still coming in, following all the rest of the crowd. We interviewed the head of admissions for a number of schools. We run a podcast called Better Decisions, and they told me that the attrition rate is around 1%. And that is an interesting statistic given the fact that there just aren't any more spaces now. People are not leaving, people are still wanting to come in. So that tells us that unlike Austin, Phoenix and other cities, there's no retraction, there's no return to the origin where these migrating families and businesses have come from. They're here to stay. And as we go through, one of the things people look at, and I hear it all the time, and they bring me statistics and say, well, we've had fewer sales in 2023. We have, because we don't have the inventory. The interesting thing about the Miami market is that the inventory is still very dry, and if you go into primary neighborhoods, it's 3 to 4 months. The luxury market is still doing very well, but the seller's paradox, as we call it, is that sellers right now have a situation where they say, I bought at a good price, my taxes are higher if I sell, and my mortgage rate is going to be higher because interest rates are up. I simply have nowhere to go, and there's not enough product for them to move. So right now there's a bit of a standoff. Inventory in these primary markets is about 4%. The luxury market, and I want to step back, and it's okay, we can stay where we are, but I wanted to reflect on the new condo market that obviously is getting developed right now. There's over 30 projects coming out of the ground in Miami over the next couple of years. I have had the pleasure of doing a number of transactions across a number of these big projects. I have noticed, and again, I've been reporting in the market since 2010. In 2015, we saw a lot of product come out that was somewhat generic. A lot of product that would sell around $750 a square foot. If you looked at the urban core, that was the product that was selling at that time. And there was beach condo product that was a little bit higher. Now, today, I can tell you that I'm seeing most of the product that's coming out of the ground is over $2,000 a square foot for new construction, and the beachfront product is over $3,000 a square foot and is selling. And the reason it's selling is because the luxury market has now got the audience that want the product. There are luxury buyers out there. Not everyone is looking for, again, as good as the house market is, as strong as it is. People are now looking to the condo market again and saying, okay, what are my options out there? And thankfully, the developers are building now these primary residence, much bigger units, much bigger spaces, much more suited to the primary life. And this is fantastic. And I think we're going to see this changing demographic buy a lot more of that. And as we go into 2023, well, we're well into 2023 now, what I've observed is a number of record-breaking sales. We've had a number of sales over 30 million. We had a sale on Palm Island at 32 million. We had sales on Four Seasons Surfside. These are resales on the MLS. Sales there coming in at 22 million. We've got currently right now luxury product now hitting the market. We have 10 products, 10 houses over $50 million in Miami. 10. That's pretty staggering to think of it. And the dollar per square foot that we're selling at is now at a record-breaking sale. We have condos that are now easily eclipsing $3,000 square foot sales this year. We've had a number of sales that I've heard about through the grapevine with big developers that are eclipsing $4,000 a square foot, which we haven't seen before. And for example, this is a house, and in the house market, we're closing this house on Thursday in Key Biscayne on the water at $3,400 a square foot. It's 50% higher than any house that ever sold on the Key. And along with that, we see a number of stellar homes now. If they're going to trade, they're going to trade at record numbers. So sales have slowed down, but we don't have the product. Luxury product is what everyone's chasing. It's very much in demand. And the migration of business into Miami is as strong as ever. And I see it going nowhere but up. And that's my summary of fair Miami market.
Well, thank you for that. I think I can speak for everyone in the room that's in the design business that we're relieved and happy to hear it, and construction. So that was an excellent and really interesting analysis. And we're going to get into that and ask more questions if you don't mind, because I really would love to hear more about how that translates into design and what those buyers are looking. And we're going to be asking our panel from a construction and development perspective and an interior design perspective and a global perspective. What does that mean for our city, which is really hot right now from what you're saying and in demand. And as much as we're going to spend time in the luxury market, which I think all of us are really interested in because it is sort of the engine that's driving a lot right now, we also are going to talk about ourselves as a city holistically and what other challenges are we facing so that we can stay up there. Because as you know, Miami is a global city. It's an international city of design now. Everybody wants to come here, but we're also a coastal city. And just like many coastal cities, if you ask people, Miami is sort of city number one in terms of future climate change and how does that impact, the perception of a buyer? Is it impacting? And in terms of design and innovation, we're going to talk about how we as designers are addressing some of the challenges that come with being a leader. We have to lead in a variety of ways from a design standpoint and from a holistic social standpoint of looking at our community as a whole. So we're going to start with luxury because I think all of us are excited and want to hear about that. And I'm going to be asking our panelists, which I'm very, very pleased to be with. Brad and I are longtime Miamians. I've been working with Brad forever. As a contractor and now as a developer, one of the buildings that we're doing a penthouse, he is the developer, Two Roads. And these lovely ladies I just met, and I'm very excited to hear about their perspective from Brazil and how they see it as interior designers, all of these things that we've been talking about, and definitely from a global perspective in Italy. I'm not going to take too much more time on the intro, and let's just dig right into it. So, does anyone want to reflect, first of all, on what David just presented? Any perspectives anything that kind of came top of mind when you heard what he was sharing with us in terms of how we're doing? Does that jive with what you're seeing? Brad, I can tell you want to grab your mics. I think first let's reflect back to David and ask maybe a question or two to him, and then we'll start our panel.
So I think you're spot on. With one kind of caveat. And what I noticed, I moved to Miami 25 years ago, and as an architect myself, it was always kind of disturbing how
I did not know you were an architect.
master's in architecture, how the quality of architecture was just somewhat poor. It was, kind of a town of kind of vanilla stucco buildings with very little fenestration, picket rails, and it was just, that's what it was. And I think the market was being led just by developers who were just looking at the bottom line. And ultimately, as Miami matured, I think people started to really consider spending more for quality architecture. You started to see them. I'm sure you started to see it as well, Jackie. People would start to pay for quality architecture. And I think COVID has just expedited that process. We have a wealthier buyer, maybe a more discerning buyer, but now after someone else kind of set the pace for that, it's becoming part of the norm. People are expecting quality in architecture and they're willing to pay for it. And I think it's great for the city because now we are the beneficiary of driving around a beautiful city to see beautiful masterpieces that are being created by wonderful architects. And it's just going to continue to perpetuate what Miami becomes as a global icon.
What's the number one thing you think that's bringing them here? What are top three? What are that you're hearing?
So it's interesting what... Can everyone hear me? When I started the process and people would call me up and say, okay, I want to move to Miami, of course, my first question was, why do you want to come here? And the initial response that I thought that people would come to me with was, well, taxes are really high where I'm at, and it's causing me problems, and I want to save money. And, I want more sun because, quite honestly, I'm in Boston or I'm in New York or Chicago, and I just want to have a more outdoors life, and I want to enjoy it more. What happened that I noticed was that the policies that were existing within other states were penalizing their residents such a level that... And I don't know. Sorry. Sorry, it's a little bit. They were getting penalized to such a level that they were spending the money, they were okay to spend the taxes, the education was suffering, their safety was suffering, their crime was up, and they got to a level where they said, you know what, I don't feel safe, so I'm going to make the move. And it was a quality of life question. It really came down to quality of life.
All right. Do you see that after the pandemic even exacerbated because you had to spend more time in your house? That that they're really making that determination they don't want to be stuck indoors somewhere where the quality of life is the fun.
Well, I think people, COVID was a black swan event, and most people work. There's a saying: most men live a life of quiet discontent. You sit down, you work, your head's down, you're going through the motions, and you're kind of like, as some clients said to me, it's like the boiling frog. The temperature's going up in the water, we're uncomfortable, but we realize you're boiling. And then pandemic allowed everyone to look up and saying, what the hell am I doing? This doesn't make any sense. And then they came into Miami, and it was amazing to take people around, and they had really no idea what Miami was like. Honestly, most people didn't appreciate the city until they moved down, and then their eyes were open. And then they got to realize that it was safe, that there was good education, that there was great life to be had, good restaurants. It's a beautiful city. I mean, it's gorgeous. And that communication went back home. That message went back to Connecticut, to New York.
I think I read somewhere there was 39,000 branded units that came on the market since 2010, and that's a 40% increase. So that's definitely a trend that's finding Miami, and it keeps growing, right? That's pretty interesting. And are people in Miami, are you finding that after the pandemic, the product that you were putting on the market and the guys, what you're designing as well, has design changed? Or after the influenza, for example, the whole idea of a powder room came to be because people wanted a way of sort of sanitizing before they came into the residence. That's an innovation. The idea of white bathrooms as opposed to like bathrooms had been using darker finishes. So there's this idea and this concern about health and wellness. How has that impacted, if at all?
I think the first thing that people are looking for, and you touched upon it a moment ago, is indoor-outdoor opportunities. So the first condos that I built in Miami, as a matter of fact, the first hotel I built in Miami had basically a Juliet balcony, just a place to go outside for a moment, maybe smoke a cigarette. And back in the day, Now people want a balcony that they can spend time on. So we even show the furniture plan on our balcony so you can see, oh, this can seat a table for 6, this can seat a table for 8. We can have my family over for dinner.
I used to argue with developers all the time. I don't know if I can afford a balcony. It's like you can't afford not to have a balcony. It's almost like human abuse not to have a balcony.
Well, I think there's been a reconnection though. I think there was a time when you would drive around Miami and you wouldn't see a single person on a balcony because no one used it.
Well, because everyone thought you'd put your bicycle on your little barbecue and you'd ruin everything. But now people have a very different relationship.
Well, once they were forced to use it, they now remember how much they enjoyed it.
That's true.
The architectural styles also changed enormously. I mean, I've noticed that a lot of the buildings that were built in the previous generation had, like you said, Juliet, those short balconies that you couldn't really do an awful lot with. You could take one step out.
When I graduated from Cornell, the Carlos and I, both of us, there was one firm that did modern, which was Arquitectonica, and we both worked there. And everywhere else, it was Mediterranean. It was like a very different world. And this city has grown so much. And having global designers come and people from other parts of the world, it only elevates the conversation because all of a sudden modern and international design and the art scene, it has taken us in a very different direction than when I at least graduated. So there are so many more options and people who are much more educated.
Statistically, we call them primary condos, don't normally say that because it's the buildings that people live in all year round. There's a big data set of condos that is really populated by the investor class, people who just rent out the units. But then there's a number of buildings but if you look at their value growth, Park Grove in Coconut Grove, Apogee, 87 Park, Four Seasons, some of these units, these buildings have big units, big terraces, and the value of them has gone up because the end users need big terraces, need big closets, need big living space. They do not want the 1,000, 1,100 square foot units anymore. That whole generation of product is going to get shelved by this new group of buyers that we're dealing with.
Let's talk about that a little bit. I worked on Apogee back in the day, and I worked with Related for a short time. I realized I wasn't a developer, more of an architect. But it was a real education because the way developers study the market and want to understand luxury, and they want to understand what that buyer is looking for. There was the time when we would do, variations of kitchens, and choice was the ultimate luxury. What are you finding that this buyer is looking for besides bigger units? Are they looking, even in branding, in alignment with brands like kitchen brands, and do they need to know like what is going into the unit, and does it have to be a much higher standard than what was the case 10 years ago?
Way higher. Way.
Much more savvy.
It's a different stratosphere.
Right.
They will not go for generic product. They will not accept it. They do not want it, and they won't accept the.
But the expectation is they're going to keep it, right? Because back 10 years ago, Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would get a condo ready or designer ready unit. And I think this goes to the whole conversation of sustainability. I think that's a positive innovation because all of those kitchens would literally get thrown in the garbage. And then the interior designer would come and say, let me tell you what an actual kitchen needs to look like for your unit. But think about the waste of that. And so I think that thankfully we've left in the past, correct?
Yeah.
Even the last generation of buildings, even the last 5 years, there are buildings, and I won't throw anyone under the bus, but there are buildings that we've sold in, and they were developed with kitchens and bathrooms, and the owners who came in, and they came in from other states, ripped everything out, everything. The kitchen went out.
About that.
The bathrooms went out, and they started from scratch. They even rewired. They even re-AC'd the entire units because they were coming from these buildings in New York that were, top of the food chain, and they wanted that, but this was their new home.
So the branding is extending not just from the hotel branding and all of these kind of partnerships and collabs, but it's also going into all the way down into what kind of, bathroom fittings, closets, and kitchens I have, and do I recognize that brand from my other house, right?
Yeah.
Yes? You've seen
It's also because there's more choices now, right? So to your point, 15 years ago, there were these generic condominiums, but that's all there was. And that's all the market would kind of appreciate. Well, once a developer finally took that step and did something better, well, then that was available. So people wanted to buy there. And then the next developer had to do something better. And now we're seeing that happen all over the marketplace, and those options are there.
Options in the ones that don't want to demo everything, they have more options. Like to say, the developers are maybe more luxury. Maybe you pay a little extra to get a better option. It's not the basic that is also available. But even when we have all these luxury options, our clients, they still want more. So like we're saying, the clients that are coming from New York, Chicago, they want the best.
Is part of that, do you think, that they don't want to deal with construction and hassle and the local market and 2 years to get into their unit? They just want it done. That is also luxury, is not to have to worry about that and not have to deal with it.
Yeah, if you remember the last cycle, people would buy a building and then they'd get their keys and they'd say, okay, now we get to start finishing their unit. And the buildings would get filled up, the elevators would get packed up with guys going in and out with all the materials, and there would be banging and clanging and power drills going on at all times of the day.
And limited construction hours.
And limited construction hours. And then it would take them another 6 months, 9 months to finish the unit. And what we're seeing now is it's not designer ready, it's designer finished. But paneling, drop ceilings, more advanced to the finishes that I know you guys do a beautiful job. Exactly, that's what they're willing to spend. And when it's your primary residence and your luxury, it's like going to the car dealership. You're not just going to buy the standard model. You want the standard model plus all the extras and all the other stuff, and you're willing to pay for it because this is your home. It's emotional.
We're definitely seeing that, especially in the high-end condos. Before, the designer-ready condo would be the kitchen, the bathrooms, and then we'll come in with flooring. Now, like we recently did the States of Aquamina, and I was surprised when the client said it's decorators ready, and we're like, okay, here we come with floor tile to show the clients and closets. And we got there, like, oh, high-end closets already done, well, flooring done. So I feel like it's changing in that way. Is that right? Like the high end will come more ready. Less work for us.
Are you giving people choice? Are you allowing that?
Yeah. I would go back to that for 1 second though. I also think that the developer finally learned that to have their brand new building kind of gone up and down by 40 different contractors, putting in flooring, doing all these things, and essentially destroying their building for the first year was really not the best way to build. And, the decorator ready was really a way to give less and charge the same price. And ultimately now I think the market figured out it's better to deliver a unit that's finished, that's high end, that if a person's coming from another market, they simply need to go to Artefacto or one of the high-end furniture stores here in town and buy their furniture and move in without having to get a building permit, without having to find a small contractor. And it's a much easier way to transition in. And we are giving choices. You can only do so many choices because you can't have 150 to 200 units in a building where you're giving everybody a choice of everything because you just can't be productive. But within reason, we're giving choices.
And what about materials? What are you guys seeing in the market as far as sustainable materials or any? We're facing everywhere globally. This buyer that we've been talking about have an expectation about finishes and stone and wood and so on. Are you seeing more synthetic materials? We just finished our first house as a luxury house with porcelain, which I had always held off from. But you're seeing it in Buffy, in the kitchens. I mean, people are really embracing synthetic materials, and they've really come along from a design standpoint to the point that even the luxury buyer, is finally. The difference is, are you guys seeing that or?
100% more man-made materials, and people are changing their mind. And I think it's our job as designers and architects to educate the client about the materials, how high-end it is, how more durable, less maintenance, and they're more open to that. I think it's almost like dated to think, you have to have real natural marble on the floor because the value, I mean, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, versus like a beautiful Italian, porcelain that's going to require zero maintenance. So I see a lot of our clients wanting that and appreciating that nowadays. And also price point. I see not a huge difference anymore between a real marble or porcelain because the porcelains are really well made and Italians know that. And yes, it's expensive too to get a very high-end material, even if it's man-made, machine-made or whatever. But yes, our clients are changing and are appreciating that.
What about you? Are you seeing more feedback?
I think you touched on a great word also, education, right? So there used to be a time when you used the word porcelain and people thought, oh, well, that's just fake, right? Not real. Now people understand that, there's quality processes, that there's better porcelain than others,
right.
Whether it's rectified properly or not rectified, whether it really looks real. And in all of our buildings, we're offering porcelain as a flooring option and different choices on that flooring. And there are opportunities then to also put some natural materials too, because, you know, natural products are also beautiful. You know, and like in the addition, it's a very warm feeling. We're using a natural white oak for all of our cabinetry, and that's that buyer. That buyer wants that kind of somewhat zen, kind of very simple feeling, as opposed to an Aquilina, which is more kind of over the top on its finishes. But I think that's where people gravitate to.
And I think every project, we always educating the clients, from the porcelain to the fabrics. Here.
And it's very interesting to listen to your conversation, and from a foreign point of view, which on the other hand is working in Miami since 2000. So what I should summarize is the awareness of quality. So the very first time we came here was 2000, and all of the products that and the materials were ordered from Italy, and that's why the project, which was the collection, was so successful and so unusual at that time, because really there was not the same understanding and the same attention to quality from, I speak about developers' point of view, because we work with developers here more than private clients. And that's why, for example, now you have the design district, for example. When I came here the first time, there was no design district. There was perhaps Miami Art Basel, perhaps, but no design Art Basel. So now the awareness of design, of quality, and from my point of view, of course, the Italian companies and the Italian quality has increased tremendously, and now even not high-end and high luxury condominium have a good standard. The kitchens are, most of them, I know that the Italian companies, Italian kitchen companies make a very big business here in Miami, because 500 apartments are 500 kitchens. So it's
Now, we've seen that, and I wonder if you guys have seen the same. It used to be that luxury homes, even you would get custom made kitchens and bathrooms, and lately we've been pricing Italian, like really high-end kitchens, and they're coming in about the same, you know, and the quality is, you know, Italian factory-made beautiful craft. Are you seeing that as well, that the pool of really good subs is dwindling, and therefore the desire of that to maintain that quality that this buyer is expecting is pushing us even more into specifying a lot of these products, or
There's another factor there. So the local firms, let's say the U.S. based firms, especially the ones that are here in South Florida, are so busy, and their prices went up so much that now all of a sudden there's a level playing field between getting things from Europe and getting things locally. Everything in Miami used to be really inexpensive.
I know, but I just
something from Italy was so expensive.
Yeah.
That might change in time. So right now, to your point, we're seeing exactly the same thing, and it's a great opportunity to take advantage of it. So you can get the high quality product from overseas at the same price that you might be getting here locally,
Plus,
at least for the moment.
and to your point before, the brand, they know, like, you know, the quality is going to be there and it's not spotty, so that's great.
Yeah. As I'm overhearing this conversation, it's triggering thoughts in my head about, you know, noticing some of the deals that we're seeing, and just some of the observations of these buyers that we've had in the last 12 months who have kind of bought these really expensive homes or condos. And, you know, the process of getting a product finished, a house, a condo, the timeline it takes to do is obviously quite lengthy now, because often these units are bigger. I mean, we're seeing units now. I used to have a hard time finding something for 4,000 square feet. Now, if you look at the new product, there's a lot of bigger 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 square foot units. But in order to get the product built, it's taking a lot longer. And the people coming in, time is the asset that $1 million never bought 1 second. And so when they come in and they rent it and it's really well done, they will pay a massive premium for it. And what that's translating for the rest of the market is it's giving confidence to those buyers who are coming in, who are buying pre-construction or buying something that's new and needs to be, and they're saying, you know what, it's okay to spend top dollar on this kitchen, or on this flooring, or on this finish, or on this house, and overall spend, because the dollar per square foot can absorb it. And that is allowing us to jump the whole new level. People are scared because they're not going to be the most expensive house on the block anymore. And I think that's just going to keep, allowing us to move in the direction that we kind of feel like we should against New York and LA.
A broker that I'll leave nameless told me recently that there's a premium to pay for ready.
Oh, yeah.
Which is really true, right? If you want it and you need it, okay, it's the only thing available. I'm going to pay for it right now. And that's why a lot of people are selling their homes that hadn't even thought about it, because it's ready and these people are coming from Citadel and the like, and they want it now.
It's hard when you've got a guy who's making 10 million a year or more. They're billionaires.
They don't have time.
They don't have time. And a million here, million there, and it sounds obnoxious, but for them it's like, look, I'm whatever, and usually they're in a stage of life when they're accomplished, very accomplished, so they're going to be older, they're not in their 20s anymore, 30s. And time is such a valuable point, and they will pay the premium, and they are, and the numbers prove it.
Let's talk about the pressure points of
Just for clarity, 50s are still young.
Which is you're good, you're dating.
I wanted to really
Best years of your life.
about, are you guys seeing prefab, or are you doing custom luxury, local fabrication more? How are you seeing your interiors shake out?
We definitely do luxury and a lot of custom, but like you mentioned, all the new workers that are local, they are taking forever. They are driving us crazy. And they are extremely expensive.
Yes.
So when we see beautiful Italian companies, here in the design district offering beautiful kitchens, for instance, we bring the clients in, they fall in love. It's much easier even for us to work with a kitchen company from Italy than doing from scratch with a carpet that we used to only do this way. And we even see clients coming. We have clients from New York, from Chicago. We meet here to go shopping, right, for everything. So Miami is the place to even go shopping.
Which is wonderful, right? To have a design district that you can see product and take your client and not have to go to New York.
Yes,
Great.
yes.
That really helps. We did price the house, and all of the kitchens and bathrooms came cheaper if we bought them with an Italian company for whatever reason. That was the first. So I'm seeing that as well. What about other prefab systems? We recently saw spas. Are you seeing that there's a lot of prefabrication coming, or not?
In the project that we're building in Edgewater, the addition, we're putting in this prefab infrared sauna.
We are too, yeah.
Versus 20 years ago would have been the guy who has a sauna company and everything's coming parts and pieces. And the quality is great because you're controlling that quality in the factory versus controlling it on a construction site with 500 workers. So
we had a developer who wanted to move walls. They're doing it in office and prefab, hotels. Are you seeing it yet in residential? Is it coming?
Not as much in the high-rise sector yet, but a lot of the prefab work that we're doing is more individual to the trades. Like most of the electrical work you see now is coming prefab. Things behind the walls, as an example. So they're building these things at their shop, delivering them to the site, so there's less assembly on the site.
And the plumbing, the Schluter system, it's one system.
Exactly.
It used to be 4 trades.
Yep.
Now it's one thing.
Right.
So, and it's waterproof. So
Which again is controlling time and quality, because when you can do things in a controlled environment, not on a construction site, and the same person is doing that same thing all day, every day, you should get a better result.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about Miami. What do we need to see more of to make this a sustainable city that has, because we're looking at the top 5, 10%, but what about everybody else? We have an affordability crisis in our city. What is it going to take for us to be able to get our way out of this rent? I think Cafe had us at the top. For every apartment that was on the market, 34 people were looking at it, as opposed to 14, which is the national standard. So we really do have an affordability crisis in our city because it is so desirable and people do want to live here, and it's driving the prices up. That's one of the. How can we get the prices down? What are the pressure points as developers, Brad, do you think would move the needle in that regard?
David touched upon it before, but people talk about traffic here all the time, and candidly, to me, that's just part of a city maturing and growing, and I think we're going to have more traffic, and we're going to have to deal with it even as we put in mass transit systems, and that's coming from somebody who literally took the Bright Line today. So I think we're getting better in that sector.
We're getting the transit-oriented development all along the spine on US 1. You see them coming out.
Helpful.
So there's definitely.
I think schools are a single biggest problem, and it's not for the Citadels of the world, candidly. It's for the executive who is moving here or that you're trying to recruit to help your business grow from another city. Maybe they're making a really good salary, $350,000, $400,000, but once they realize that the schools aren't so good, and I've got to go to Gulliver, Ransom, Country Day, Columbus, one of these other private schools where I've paid for those private schools for a long time, and you're spending $40,000+ a year after tax dollars per kid, and you've got 3 kids. Next thing you know, that salary doesn't look so good anymore. And that becomes an issue. And then they have to choose, well, now I got to move to Cooper City or Weston or Pembroke Pines. And then that's not really the moving to Miami dream. So I think our schools need to get better. And unfortunately, while we have this amazing tax situation that's attracting people, if our taxes, instead of being a 13% savings, were an 11% savings, and we gave 2% back to help our schools, we'd solve, I think, a lot of problems. That's the platform I'm going to run for governor. Just kidding.
Are you saying that?
You hit the nail on the head. It's very true. It's really true that the schools, I mean, if you look, I've got 2 daughters in private school, and when I look around and I have families who come to me and they say, okay, we're ready to buy a house, and then a month later they say, I couldn't get into Gulliver, I couldn't get into Pearl, I couldn't get into, only Ransom obviously is the poster child right now for the hard school to get into. So then they're looking elsewhere and they're going further south, and that's where we see growth going more north, and Miami Shores obviously has done better, Morningside has done better, going into the south area, going into Palmetto Bay. That areas, obviously prices have gone up there, but the reality of it is that Miami is not a cheap city. It's not, and I don't think it's suddenly going to get cheaper overnight. And suddenly, it's the reality that we are in a city that has become like Singapore. It's one of the most expensive cities on the planet to live, and unfortunately, there's no getting around that. There is a level of landlocked element to a number of neighborhoods in Miami, and if you want to talk about neighborhoods for investments to go up, just choose a landlocked neighborhood around the best private schools, and that market is not going down. It will just keep going up. There's no more space, no more land. People have been buying up land like crazy, but yeah, I mean, we don't have enough spaces.
How important?
I'm sorry. So I've had 2 kids go through Ransom, and I have one in Gulliver now, and I'm on the board of directors at Gulliver. And when people would move to town, or they were thinking of moving to town, oh, what do you do? What's your business? What does your wife do? You're on the board of Gulliver? Oh my God. Like, that was the single greatest thing that they thought, because, oh, maybe there's an opportunity to introduce me to somebody to get your kid into school. People can't, there's not even the numbers to get in. And that's a big problem.
And what about this idea of a walkable city? The new people that are coming in are coming from, areas that maybe they had more walkability, or is that something that you're seeing your clients are making a decision about based on if the community is a walkable city or has access to transit? How important is that?
It's funny, we were talking about this today, and I think it's divided. I think it depends on the demographic, right? I think even our clients, young clients that want to move in from New York, let's say, they're used to this. So they want to live in Brickell area. They want to live where they can walk around. But if we have families moving in, it's about the school district. So it's not, they're not going to walk around. So, yes.
The Coconut Grove is like ground zero for walkability in Miami. You want to talk about the most walkable neighborhood? It's Coconut Grove. And Sunset Harbor for the beach is hugely popular. And yes, people will come in and they'll say, and I've sold a number of houses and all condos, and they'll say, you know what, I don't drive. I haven't driven a car for 20 years, so I need to be walkable. And then I'm like, it's kind of a problem because we don't have a lot. And obviously, so Brickell's growing, and that's where the luxury market in Brickell's growing, because people do want walkability. The Grove is just, prices are through the roof, just absolutely through the roof. And, you see developments around Coral Gables. But the truth is there are areas where it takes a few years for people to relocate, to say, you know what, maybe I can move a bit more south. And then as the kids get older, they'll move to Pinecrest, and they do move down there. But I think what I'm seeing now is that they are realizing that they just don't have the ability to be absolutely walkable for the budget that they have, and they have to move a bit further out.
That's why the trend now is transit. It's not transit-oriented development, it's transit-oriented communities. And you're seeing along the spine where the Metro Rail is, which is where Henry Flagler originally planned the train. That's because that was high ground. So the evolution of Miami in the future, among architects and urbanists as we're looking at it, is to move more density to higher ground, near transit, so that more people can afford to live near these areas like Coconut Grove, and have access to the more desirable areas. That doesn't happen unless we increase density. How do we get there, Brad? If the cost of construction and the lending, what are you saying that could? It's got to be some public-private partnership, right?
I was going to say, usually these things need to be supported by government in some way, shape, or form. I think Francis has done an amazing job as a mayor. As a matter of fact, as a registered Democrat, you don't usually hear someone supporting a Republican, but I think because he's, so close to the middle, he's really a mayor for the people, and hopefully he can help, the state get behind some of these initiatives, because I think that's what we really need to help the city keep growing.
Milena, we'd like to end with you. How are you seeing this conversation in Miami, and how does it compare to what you've seen in Italy in terms of, development trends or real estate? How do you see things going here?
Yes. So, first of all, starting from the end of this conversation, I think that really one of the big problem of Miami, if there are, of course, I come from a country a wonderful country, but with a lot of problems, much more than here. But the problem could be really the transportation. And now that, for example, in Europe, we speak a lot about the city of 15 minutes, no? So from the moment you live in a place, you must have only 15 minutes to walk and go everywhere. This is not possible at the moment here. You're trying, and this will be the great success, which will not make the city more affordable, because it will never be, probably, because it will be like New York, Los Angeles, Singapore, very expensive cities for everybody. But this is the challenge, I guess. And the other challenge that I see, which is also something that in Europe and in Italy we are trying to face now very, very strongly, is the sustainability. And all the questions about quality and the discussion we had now about quality, about the good quality of the materials, of the furnitures, of the kitchens, goes towards sustainability. So this is a good starting point, because if you have a cheap kitchen, perhaps you throw away, you have waste, you have to produce new kitchens. So if you have a good quality kitchen, then it starts to be sustainable. The same is for lighting. Now there is a big attention also in the projects that we are developing now, both in residential here in Miami and also in office buildings, with another developer, and also the collection that Lucia mentioned before. The attention of lighting is something which is very important. It is important from an aesthetic point of view, because we believe that light in a project is 50% of the quality and of the beauty, because and in Miami you have already a wonderful sunlight which can be exploited in the best way, really. And also light now can be very good also from a sustainable point of view, with the new materials, the new technicians, the automation of the buildings, which is very, very important. So these are, I started from what we care now very much in Europe and in Italy, and what perhaps here is starting to be considered much more deeply. 10 years ago or 20 years ago, when you spoke about sustainability here, they said, forget. I mean, now it's no longer like this, so this is very positive. And you have another great opportunity which goes towards the trends of the design and of the architecture, which is the green. Biophilic now is everywhere, everybody's speaking about biophilic, the green, which is protecting the climate and giving health to the citizens. And here you have such a great climate that, for example, that project that was showing to Chia now is a people mover. You have also here the people mover. And we fight it in Italy 10 years ago to have the solar panel and the photovoltaic and the green screen on the machine, on the rail. Because there we have big problems in maintaining the green. Here it grows by itself without any problem.
We have plenty of sun. We're the sunshine state, so we should embrace that. Well, thank you all. We want to give you some time for questions. I'm really very grateful for the opportunity and the conversation, especially post-pandemic, to have conversations and to have fellowship with other designers and to learn from some people that know a lot more than I do and have good news for a change. So thank you so much. And
Just so Plastic would not be here today, but he sent the message, and so I'm late to pray to Peter.
Hello, welcome to Talk for Things and Cleaning. I am Massimo Iosa Ghini, architect, founder of Iosa Ghini Associati, and I have to agree that you, as we embark on an insightful journey into the future of residential design. I apologize for not being with you in Miami, but you would meet my daughter, Lena. She is here with you. Our discussion will be focused on creating beautiful and functional spaces that improve our quality of life. And I hope that we, like Iosa Ghini Associati, can be ready interesting contribution also share with our projects that we realize in this great city. I would like to extend my gratitude to Medelhan for organizing this event, and to our host, Instituto Paraco. Hope to meet you soon in Miami next time. And bye-bye from Italy.
Christy. With her I thought this should have been up before, but the conversation was so and yet that was not on so well, but I wanted to wrap. Right, so if anybody, and that was to face. Anyone else?
any questions? Do we have the mic?
Oh, so they can for any that Mark.
Maybe you give you a mic. Be good. I'll walk up the top with the banner weight.
Thanks so much. So, Gianluca, hi everybody. I'm from Meridiani, Marketing Director. So, I just relocated a few months ago from New York City here. So, I do hear some of the, the aspects that we face during this conversation. So, my question is mostly about demographic. You very briefly mentioned already a couple of demographics. So during the presentation, we were talking about families. So I'm assuming there are around, let's say, 30, 35-ish, and young generation. So the question is, what are the different demographics that you're seeing coming into the city, and what are they asking for? So I'm assuming that some of the youngest generation may search for entertainment or cultural activities, and maybe some other kind of generation are searching, as you were saying, services about education. So maybe they're more concerned about their, kids. So what are the demographics that you're seeing coming in the city, and what are they searching for? That's the question. Thanks so much.
Okay, good question. So you've got a really broad spectrum of people coming in. You've got people who have just left college and they're going for their first job, and they've just got hired by a new company that either has a base here, or it's a hub, or it's a second office. So they're coming in for their first time job. You've got we're seeing a lot of kids, I've noticed with families where their kids went to college somewhere else in the country, and guess what? They've come back into Miami. They didn't think they would. They thought they'd stay in New York or California, but they've come back in and they're looking for work here. And, those are the people entering into the workforce. You've got a pretty big movement of entrepreneurs as well. It's kind of interesting. I kind of refer to them as global nomads. You've got people coming in from all over the world. They're often people that have lived on many continents. They're not just from, one place. They may have been in Hong Kong or New York or Australia, and it's not, and I know I've mentioned about the US crowd, but it's interesting. We'll have conversations I had a conversation with someone from the UK an hour ago. They didn't know I was going to be British, so it was a bit of a funny conversation. I've had people from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, like very, very broad. And that makes it really, really interesting, because then you've got a group of that's why I say Singapore is a good example. Then, of course, you've got the families, but you've also got the empty nester crowd as well. That's a very, very big, substantial crowd of people coming in where their kids have already left for college and they want to make their home here. And obviously, those guys look at condos. And I think outside of that, you've got
The thought retirees anymore.
yeah, no.
It's like the CEO.
It's not at all. Not at all. In fact, I actually feel that crowd is getting more pushed out. And yeah, well, the funny thing is that crowd that were retirees, that's an interesting crowd that I think is going to experience probably one of the biggest problems in Miami moving forward, because you've got residents in older buildings that are going through major assessments. Obviously, because of the insurance premiums going up, they're having a harder time. They're not working. They're not in the workforce anymore. So inflation's taking a real chunk of their money, and then their HOA fees are going up. And now those guys are starting to be pushed out. And the same in the single-family market as well. You've got retired attorneys and other professionals. They say, I just can't afford to live here anymore. So they're moving out. They're moving upstate. They're moving into other more affordable states, because Miami is just not as affordable anymore.
Would you say, so what we're seeing on our projects is, years ago, it was driven by the foreign buyer in Miami, right? All condo sales were, and now we're not seeing that as much. There's still obviously the strong foreign market, but we're seeing big time sales right here from the U.S.
It's interesting, because if you've got the amount, and again, you're right, there was a cycle, and again, reflecting with the Brazilian market, for example, I remember 12 to 15, we had mass migration mass buyers coming from there, because the exchange rates were so favorable. So massive inflection of buyers coming in, buying real estate, and then obviously buying it, I remember when it was 2 to 1, and now obviously 6 to 1. So, they made out like bandits, did really, really well. Now, obviously, that crowd is really dominated by a lot of the US crowd. Europeans are coming in as well. I'm interested to know, because now we're seeing uptick with South American buyers coming back in as exchange rates move. That's a whole other wave, but we haven't even seen that yet. We haven't really felt the impact of that. So yeah. I mean, we track Google me and my team. We're a real tech group, so we track Google really closely, and we reverse engineer using certain websites to see traffic coming in from Venezuela, Colombia, Mexico, Brazil, and some other areas that you might have thought, wow, I didn't see that one coming. And interestingly enough, interest coming from India, China. Again, not expected, but really happening. So broad demographic, but also broad nationality now as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. This is Ezgi Fitos, architect and founder at Designology. My question is for Brad. And it's about sustainability, aspect of sustainability. So in your developments, do you think that sustainability can, add like a sellability or rentability feature do you find that, new buyers are looking for that aspect, or you can charge more per square foot, if your building has a LEED certificate, or the brands that you are affiliated with, do they have certain requests in terms of sustainability? Because I think, they do the management, so I guess they would have benefits in terms of, lower costs of running and maintenance, etc. And after that, perhaps interior designers could also answer the same question in terms of, like, do you have, the new sort of buyers, perhaps those coming from north, are sort of asking for sustainability features. So,
the code here in Miami now requires either LEED certification or green certification of some sort. So all of our buildings as a base standard have that, and it's a requirement. But I think you're right. I think the buyers are getting smarter. I think parents are concerned about the environment their children are going to live in. I don't know yet if it's going to really bring an uptick in what people are willing to spend, but there's a certain basic expectation that people have now in the world. And it's not just about what you buy for a living. It's about your car. Look how many electric cars are on the road, other things. And I think we have a much smarter, more data is available to us. People are actually looking when they come to buy units. They're Googling things right away as they walk into a sales center. Oh, what is this product? What is that product? They can find out right away. So you can't kind of fool any buyers anymore. But as far as are people willing to spend more yet, that's kind of yet to be seen. I think they will, but it's not proven yet.
Yes, thank you. Well, for us interior designers, I would say I don't hear clients asking much. I think we can do a much better job, to be honest, with that, with sustainability and environment. I feel like we have some work to do, I believe, in Miami. But I see a lot with vendors when in our office, for instance, we have every Friday we have new vendors coming in with new products, and we love to learn about new products. So it's definitely in our minds to ask questions like, is there any chemicals used to prepare or to fabricate certain things? And I think it's more about wellness and well-being and healthy issues more than sustainability, but it's in our minds, and I think we're training our team to ask questions like that. Being from Brazil, we love carpentry, we love a beautiful millwork, we love wood, right? But I'm happy to see that vendors like Laila just came back from Brazil to visit some factories, and we're very happy to find out that yes, we're not killing trees out there for nothing. There's a lot of certificate that the vendors are now required to provide, and we as interior design, I think we have to do a better job and find these type of vendors, these type of materials, and educate our clients. But I don't see our clients asking much.
They're not asking us. I think we are asking first.
Yes, the ones educating them about it.
So there was one thing that happened due to COVID, right? Is there used to be a time when all of the building supplies we wanted were readily available. Everything was readily available. Everything was stocked. Light fixtures, plumbing fixtures, drywall, carpentry, all sorts of things were stocked. And obviously COVID froze that. We're still going through a struggle, right, to get things quickly. But on the other hand, that meant that lots of these things won't become waste because things were stocked and then eventually they became waste when they weren't bought or sold. And not only was it bad for the environment, but we were paying for that stock. So now things, when they're ordered custom, you at least know that they're going to be used in your project and they won't go to the dumpster.
I want to touch on that because as an architect, we do get, especially tech-oriented buyers who are more like innovative or more futuristic. They do want to push the envelope on solar. And we're starting to see it because from an insurance perspective, insurers will not insure you. And so we're starting to get that question. What's our resiliency strategy? How are we going to argue that an investor wants to invest here? And all it will take is a few, I hate to be Debbie Downer, I'm not going to, but a few bad storm cycles, and then people are going to be asking, what's my redundancy power strategy? And if you're looking at the luxury buyer, the ultimate luxury in the future is not to be disrupted, especially if you're working from home, especially if you would like to stay in your home or get back to your home. You would like to have that extra solar array, or you would like, we have a house in Venetian Island that has the first gray water recycling. Why? Because we couldn't get the sewer allocation. So it wasn't because the developer wanted to do it, but it was the only way to get a permit. So as we start getting pressured from less fresh water, we're going to be doing what we do when we build in the islands. We're going to be doing rainwater recycling, rainwater harvesting. It may not come because the buyer is asking because they want to be green. It might be coming because of the insurance, because of mortgage, or because of trying to live in a tropical place that is going to be subject to more frequent, heavier storms. That's the reality of the planet. And I think because we are in a hot, humid climate, many places that people are coming from, they're trying to put air conditioning into old houses now, and it doesn't work. We've been having air conditioning for a long time. We have to make it sustainable. We have to learn. But I will say, as a Cuban architect, for example, our people have been designing in hot, humid climates for many, many decades, and we're kind of experts at it. So I think that's knowledge that can be exported to the rest of the world as they get be hotter and more humid. And as a Brazilian, we know how to design for the tropics, and I think the world is getting hotter, so that knowledge is going to come in handy. So it's an opportunity to lead. And it may not be what your buyer asks for, but there was a Pritzker-winning architect that said, as designers, we're called to not just design for the brief, we're designing for the planet now, and we have to do better. So
California bears are very conscious of this. I can tell you from insurance, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is this new flood zone. And I ran a podcast interview with a guy who used to work for Citizens Insurance. I hope no one, is anyone here from Citizens Insurance? Okay, good, just checking. And he used to work for them, now he fights them in court. And he was dealing with a situation after Maria and the wildfires in California. And he was saying that it was really hard getting them to pay out. Hard is an understatement, I'm really playing this down, but it was pretty bad. And the truth is that Chubb pulled out of South Florida. AIG obviously had their problems, and Citizen is the insurance of last resort. So if you haven't looked at what they're doing right now, one of the reasons the HOA fees have gone up is because their insurance premiums have gone up. And there are houses in these primary neighborhoods that we deal with that if you have a home built prior to 2001 and it's in the flood zone, they are tripling the flood zone insurance. And again,
when we do with our clients, we tell them if the flood zone's X, go up 2 more feet. We're building resiliency, even though the code is not, because you have an expectation that code is going to protect you and code is going to tell you what's needed. But we're not there right now. So designers have to design and builders have to design beyond the code to think about the long term, because again, we're not doing disposable architecture. That is not what we're doing. So if you're going to be in the business of building something that's for 20, 30, 50 years, you can't design it for the FEMA flood zones right now and the codes right now because they're not adequate.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be several steps ahead. And then if you look down into these other areas, I'm seeing people come in saying, I've had families say, I love the fact that there's a mango tree and an avocado tree, I can be self-sufficient. There's solar roofs that are going in these houses. You're right, it may not be that they are like the most green, like if they're honest with themselves and say that am I, a green activist and I'm going to go out there and I'm really going to, I'm into recycling. Everyone agrees and loves the idea that they want to be more conscious about looking after their families, the earth and everything that we live in. But the reality is that there is a real cost that people are weighing up, and they understand that if they are going to have their primary home, and these are big houses with big running costs, they want to, one, protect their asset, because it's their primary asset, and number two, manage their costs, because costs are high, and so they'll do the electric roof, they'll do the solar.
Now we're all charging our cars. Solar, by the way, also limits losses. If you have a redundant power source, then you can turn on the fans, and then you don't get your drywall full of mold by the time you get back to your house. So there are things that you do to protect your clients, whether they ask it for it or not. It's part of our job is to kind of help them to see the why and the value of it, so that when the future, if it should come, and I believe in science, so I do believe it is, that we get to do the very best job to make the buildings we design for the future.